weren't supposed to be in there, but they were.
But I'm saying, there really ain't a lot of use of that.
Not so far. I see way more. OHV. That and horse trailers.
That's why I said.
Wherein public safety and visitor protection are integrated into our daily park operations. So it's really at the core of what we're trying to provide. Stewardship, that we will monitor and manage and protect natural, cultural, and recreational resources, which is very important for this park concerning it is surrounded by the wildlife management area as well as other public lands. And then sustainability, which actually, in this context, we refer to fiscal sustainability, wherein the Parks Division will grow a sustainable stream of revenue that economically benefit the park and also enhance the local community and tourism. So a little bit about the planning process. It's actually been a longer planning process. Of course, like I said, it started in 2010 with the acquisition. There was an environmental assessment process that went with that. So we took that EA and the decision notice and started with that and then built from that process to focus on the state park specifically. We started actually 2 summers ago with the information gathering. We had an intern with the University of Montana come out and do a resource inventory of the road system. And we did public scoping here in Superior, and many of you were there. I recognize a couple of your faces. And we took your comments and your feedback and incorporated it into a draft plan, along with our park priorities and staff expertise. We worked with internal agencies and our stakeholders this past fall to do an internal review of the plan. And then we're now in the public comment period for our proposed draft management plan, which we will take to our Montana State Parks and Recreation Board in February following the public comment period to finalize that plan. So I'll go into a little bit more detail. For the road inventory, you'll see a series of maps in the plan in the current context portion where we look at this in a bit more detail. So again, like I said, we partnered with the University of Montana to have an intern out there in the summer of 2012. Had approximately 70 miles of former logging roads just within the park boundary. There's a lot on other lands, but that's what we calculated within the park boundaries. Majority are unimproved gravel roads. They were originally built for logging, so the grades range from flat to over 30%, which can be a challenge for recreation, or it can be a good thing, whatever you like. And about 35 miles, or half of the road system, is currently designated as open. And this was previously established by Plum Creek Timber, which managed the land prior. So we haven't changed any of the open-closed status since we acquired the land, but of course within this plan and in future development, we hope to evaluate the road system and what uses would be appropriate on it. And then determine if are there any, as we develop a trail system, if there are any connections that need to be made to enhance the recreation experience. And that map is in the plan along with a couple other maps. I was just going to say the poor road condition, we assessed the road condition as a good, fair, poor, and the poor is the dark, which you can see are quite a few of the roads, meaning that they're very steep, they might have some hazards on them, they're narrow, so it's definitely a beat up area currently, you could say. Go ahead. So there are some current amenities and uses. This is not a newly discovered area. It is one of our newer state parks, but it's been used for quite a while. Hunting and fishing are predominantly the current use, as well as some motorized use and hiking along the road system. firewood cutting, gathering, and berry picking. We also heard were some main uses currently. Also wildlife viewing, photography, and we do have one commercial guide that does trips and tours throughout the park. As far as amenities, there really are no amenities currently, but there is the Williams Peak Lookout, top of Williams Peak, that is currently closed, but we do have hopes that it could provide a unique overnight opportunity for park visitors if upgraded and stabilized. It's about 60 feet above Williams Peak, and if you go to the next slide, it offers some really amazing vistas over to the Bitterroots and towards Idaho, of course, east as well. You can see the road going up and the nice landscape, and then this, you can see a lot of the area has been logged and there have been fires. I think the most recent was 2005, if I'm correct. So it's a very, some areas are quite sparse, but the view nonetheless is really amazing, and that's just kind of up top on it. So during public scoping, just wanted to touch on that briefly. In the plan, in the appendix, there is the public scoping summary that goes into more detail, but we just wanted to briefly discuss what we heard that led us into our draft recommendations and proposals. We heard a number of values about the state park that people feel strongly. A lot of recreation opportunities, diverse camping settings. Heard a lot from user groups regarding trails, particularly motorized recreation and mountain biking, as well as the desire for continued hunting and trapping in the area, as well as the special uses for firewood gathering and berry picking. Heard a number of conservation priorities from the conservation groups, wildlife habitat, connectivity between the wildlife management area and the state park. There's some important wildlife corridors in the northern portion of the park. Also, of course, Fish Creek is a, what's it, I'm not a fisher, blue trout. Blue ribbon trout stream. So enhancing that as far as access or any amenities, and then of course protecting the fisheries and aquatic restoration was an important value that came out. And then of course the economic opportunities that I've touched on. We heard from Mineral County and residents as well as Glacier Country Tourism. And we did hear a number of concerns, which I want to throw out there that were important in our consideration of the plan. There's a lot of concern for an increase in visitation will cause impacts to road maintenance and public utilities. Roads, bridges were a really big thing that we heard. Also public safety and law enforcement, which there'll probably be some questions later so we can discuss that at the end of this, but we did hear that law enforcement was a big issue or big concern that people had with any increase in visitation at the park. And then operations and maintenance, we do have Mike Hathaway is currently our only staff member there, so an increase in visitation and development would certainly require more staffing, better staffing, and that goes along with just a stronger state parks presence to have there. And then some other things like weed control were listed as some big concerns. So after that, again, we took the input that we received during scoping, developed a draft plan, and also worked with some internal partners during a review period to really have some good discussions and make the plan much more comprehensive. Around Fish Creek State Park, like I said, there's a lot of different public land agencies, the Wildlife Management Area, Lolo National Forest, DNRC State Trust Lands, as well as being within Mineral County and then Glacier Country Tourism. So we really, collaboration, communication will be a big part of this plan, and we took the time during this planning process to review that internally and hopefully make the draft plan a little bit better and reflect some of those constituents' concerns, which hopefully you'll see in the plan. And just a quick overview of the outline. So there's generally 3 sections of the plan. The first is the current context, which I didn't break it out into section 1, 2, or 3 in the plan, but chapters 1 through 4 discuss kind of the relation to relevant plans and the park background and the current context. And again, goes over some of those values that I just discussed. The next section is a regional context and economic opportunities. We really wanted to analyze the park within the regional context to understand what opportunities were offered currently or not offered. And again, the trails was a really big theme that came up, as well as developed camping when looking at the opportunities found on neighboring lands regionally. And then the last section is our future management direction, which is probably the most interesting to all of you, hopefully. We look at the management concepts and definitions, including proposed management units, discuss the map a bit more, and then we do provide our goals and recommendations, as well as development concepts, and talk a little bit about implementation. So that's the general outline of the plan. And now I'm going to turn it over to Chet Krauser, who's going to talk in more detail about the proposed management direction.
All right, well, thank you guys for coming out. I know your schedules are probably as busy as mine, so we do appreciate you taking the time to come out. My name is Chet Krauser. I'm the Regional Park Manager in Missoula. And to start, to talk a little bit about the management direction, which is really sort of where the rubber meets the road part of the plan. We'll start with the vision that the plan puts forward for Fish Creek. And Fish Creek State Park is a cherished state park with incredible scenic vistas and recreational treasures for visitors of all ages and abilities. The park provides a unique experience within the Montana State Park system, offering a diversity of activities and important natural resource values. Furthermore, the park is recognized as a regional destination that helps enhance the quality of life and economic vitality of the surrounding community. Diverse camping is provided in an array of park settings, and non-motorized and motorized trails connect visitors to the park's recreational and natural resources, as well as regional opportunities through safe and fun experiences. So that's the vision that the plan puts forward and kind of helps set the stage for the direction as we go through the details here. This is kind of the map that helps illustrate some of where the management direction is headed. And each of the shaded colors here represent one of these 4 units, A through D, and they're each named separately: front country, natural, back country, and resource. To the side, and it's a little fuzzy here, but do look in the plan or on the maps there and the larger maps, and you can see more of the definition here. Some of these squares show then acceptable facilities and uses that would then take place in each of these zoned areas. So that gives you an idea, not necessarily of exactly what you will find, but some of what potentially could exist there. And that helps kind of differentiate the different units there. In addition, there's descriptions of each of these areas that also help kind of give the narrative side of those symbols that are represented on the map. So for front country, that's where you could find public contact station, developed campgrounds, shared use trails, paths, group use areas, yurt cabin rentals, and commercial use. You can bump back to that slide, Mark. So that would be this darker area up here in Unit A. The natural area is rustic recreational opportunities, rustic camping, fire lookout rental, also potentially yurts or huts, hike-in, bike-in camping, non-motorized and motorized trail system, hunting, fishing, and commercial use. We'll go back to the map, Mark. And then that would be this middle area here, kind of the darker green shading. The backcountry, low encounters with park staff and other visitors, low level of development, non-motorized trails in that unit, hike-in, bike-in, camping, and hunting and fishing. And that's going to be sort of these edges here to the south and then kind of up there in the northeast corner. And then the last is the resource, which would be day use only. There you'd find interpretation, education, wildlife viewing, pretty minimal development. It would be non-motorized, and then hunting and fishing. And that's up here on the edge. This also corresponds with where some of the wildlife migration corridor is at and where some of the sensitivity there for resource values exists. The management direction is broken into these 7 categories, and those categories were developed basically by themes that came out of the scoping, the statewide comprehensive outdoor recreation plan for the state of Montana, and then also research that was done along the way through the planning process. Some of those issues and themes that helped to drive some of this that we had discovered were recreational opportunities, facilities and services, trails, both non-motorized and motorized, special uses, park operations and maintenance, overall visitor experience, and natural resource protection. So those are some of the elements that you'll find in each of these categories. So each of them is broken down, and I'm going to give you kind of a snapshot of what's in the plan. There's going to be a lot more detail in there. And those are basically broken into, this one will be public safety. It would give a description of what public safety is. Then it would have goals and associated objectives that would then help us determine sort of the management direction and then management actions that we would be looking at. So public safety, here we're talking about emergency incident response, public health and risk reduction, and the law enforcement presence and coordination. Recreation management, we're talking there about just simply access to the park, overnight camping opportunities, hunting and fishing, this high quality trail system that would include a lot of different trail uses. And I think Maren also pointed out earlier, mountain biking and motorized were a couple of the things that we heard early on in scoping as far as specific trail uses that were of interest. And then resource and recreation management consistency with lands adjacent to the park. That would be things like the Alberton Gorge and having compatible management that helped with those opportunities. Where we border with the wildlife management area, working to help have some consistency with things like public use regulations so that they're easy boundaries, so to speak, for the public to understand and use in terms of the public lands. Facilities and services, travel system for park roads, welcome and orientation, where you would go to the park to find some of the orientation materials and what opportunities were there. Park improvements overall, potential concessionaire services that could take place as part of the park, and then coordination with agencies and adjacent landowners. Again, kind of the same topic there as before, consistency, and then also management challenges that might relate to, say, a private landowner that was adjacent to the park and issues they had and working to try to make things work for both parties. Park operations. Here we're really talking about the nuts and bolts of what it takes to manage the park and to operate the park. Your staffing needs, budgetary needs, law enforcement, equipment, and then moving forward, revenue generation. Maren talked about the sustainability. For us to be able to manage the park, looking for opportunities to generate revenue that supports the park and the rest of the system. And then a point of contact and ranger station where folks would be able to go and they know they can find information or find staff that can answer questions, help them out, that sort of thing. On a little bit broader look here, tourism and economic opportunities, how does the state park tie into the local economies and even larger, more regional look of economic opportunity? Looking at this park really as a regional destination where folks would seek that as a location and make it their destination. Marketing and promotion, the state park program has really taken a hard look at trying to increase awareness of the state park system, getting commercials on TV. You might have seen some of those, so there'll be some more upcoming here through the next Olympics. But really giving people an idea what's out there and the opportunities that exist. And promoting economic opportunities for local communities, getting back to some of the ideas like concessionaires and the like. What sorts of business opportunities or economic benefits can local communities see as a result of the state park being next door in their county or in their local community? And then volunteer and partner engagement and trying to figure out ways to not only implement things within the park, but also build into larger economic opportunity and business opportunities through potential volunteer partnerships. We've talked about the really high-quality natural resource values of Fish Creek in general, not just within the state park, but even drainage-wide. Natural and cultural resource stewardship, we'd be looking at things like noxious weed management, landscape connectivity, and natural resource stewardship, which is going to include wildlife migration corridors and habitats, forest resource management, best management practices for trail and facility development, and basically that's how does that development best fit within the natural resources, the environment, and other concerns that exist. And then a cultural resource survey, which helps address existing cultural resources and how to manage the park with those there. Interpretation and education, really looking at different themes. One example could be bull trout on Fish Creek, and helping folks understand some of the concerns there. It could be leave no trace and tread lightly for some of the hike-in, bike-in, or OHV users on how best to take care of the park and how to interact with others. Utilizing interns and AmeriCorps members, which help us build capacity and get some of the projects done that we need to get done in order to move the park forward and move the program forward. And then looking at the park itself as an outdoor classroom resource. So it could be a tool and a resource for local schools, et cetera, to come out and use that as an additional learning environment. Once you get past the part of the plan that has a lot of that description, as I mentioned before, the goals and objectives, and do take some time to thumb through that. I don't want to bore you with the details here, but we're happy to answer questions. You'll find some of the development concepts, and this is one chunk of that. This is the developed table here, and you'll see that corresponds with the proposed management units in the map that I showed earlier. There's a separate section for each of those management units. And it says here, it's just basically a suggested blueprint for the park infrastructure, facility development, and it's intended to go through about the next 10 years. That's not to say all of this stuff would absolutely happen within 10 years. It's just kind of giving us a platform and some direction. Here's where you'll see some of the potential uses that could occur. So for example, we've got the developed area. You could have tents, RVs, group camping, yurts and cabins, a group day use area, and then associated with each of these, a description of kind of what that might look like, and then the design guidelines that would go with it. So staying here with tents, RVs, group camping area, we'd be looking at the north central area of the park, access from Forest Service Road 344, the Williams Peak Road, vehicle access, close to I-90 access, trail connections, the reservation system for camping would be in place for there, and then design guidelines. So talking about 40 to 60 sites, 2 to 3 loops, consider double sites, paved, electrical hookups, potable water, modern amenities, flush toilet, showers, that sort of thing. Picnic table, fire pit at each site, up to 4 RV host sites, and up to 5 walk-in, bike-in, tent sites. So that gives you kind of an idea of how it's structured to describe what we might see out there. This stops short of a full site plan. We acknowledge that it doesn't get to that level, but this helps set the stage and give us some direction moving forward. I think this is probably the next logical step. Most folks would say, okay, so when does that happen? How is that going to happen? And as you get to Chapter 10, you'll see that it's not a very lengthy chapter. The implementation is really geared to be a phased implementation. The initial focus is going to be primarily on the fundamental state park system standards. There we're talking about things as simple as signage, general maintenance types of things, safety, the 4 S's that Mara mentioned earlier. It's really the basics. New developments, kind of in line with the phased implementation idea, are really going to be geared toward what's the availability for funding, what kind of partnerships are available that might help us get there. It's going to be very much an opportunistic type of scenario. We realize that there's a lot here in the plan, a lot of potential for the park. We're going to have to look for opportunities as we move forward. And then in addition to all of that, as these projects come online, particularly related to development, groundbreaking projects, there will be additional public review process, EAs, and analysis that is conducted along with those proposals. So there will be continued involvement opportunities to help look at how the park, looks into the future and shapes out. That's my part. I'll maybe turn it back over to Mara real quick, and she can give you kind of the idea on how to provide comment, and then set the stage for questions, and love to hear from you guys.
So again, this green sheet you can fill out and leave with us tonight, or you can take it and send it. Really, again, the plan is available to download on the website. It is fairly long, although I think I did get it compressed to about 3 megabytes to download. So that's good because the print one's about 30 megabytes. But if you do want a hard copy, we have some here tonight that we can give you, or we can take your name and address and send you one. Again, looking for written comments, so this is not like a public testimony night, with discussion or answer questions, but please do provide your comments in writing by January 24th. I know it's over the holiday season, kind of bad timing, but it's just kind of how the cards fell as far as our planning process. There's 2 ways to comment: online on our website, stateparks.mt.gov. On the left side, there'll be a bunch of buttons. Click on the public notices, and it'll take you to what you can comment on currently. And click on the Fish Creek one, and you can just type it in there directly. Or you can send us it by hard copy to this address listed here. So that's pretty much it. Well, answer any questions you guys want, or if you, again, like I said, if you want a plan, we can get you one as well. Please do sign in. Keep your hands.
So at the last meeting, I got the impression that there was no money, but you haven't talked about that at all this meeting. Is it now that it's getting closer, there's going to be money allotted to all these different things, or is it going to be something that's still far down the road?
You can take that.
Okay. So yeah, the question was, and we'll repeat for the video, but the question really is kind of getting at the money issue, and now that the park's getting closer, is there funding that's come along? We do have a limited amount of operational funding, which includes part of Mike's time. Overall, it's not much at all. It's about 0.65, so that's 65% of basically a person for the year, and that's split amongst 4 folks. So it doesn't take long to kind of do the math on that one and realize that we're probably running short there in terms of having enough bodies. We do also have a small operating budget to do some of the just general maintenance types of things. We're going to need to continue to pursue additional resources there. As far as the development dollars, we've got the development project on our list, our wish list, so to speak, of projects, but that money has not been allocated. So we'll be continuing to look for opportunities to get funding for that. But the plan is intended to give us some direction there and then improve the likelihood that we could get some funding if we came and said, hey, here's the package that we're looking to do, and we need some funds for it. It helps us make that argument. So.
Is the recreational trails program grants a possibility? It seems like a good fit.
Yeah, I am. It is. It's a tool that we would have, a resource we would have. Again, at that level, you're going to be talking specifics, and where is the trail? Where does it start and connect? All those kinds of things. What are the uses? So, we would have some work to do in general, park-wide. Where would a project like that fit? What would it look like? There'd be obvious public involvement that would take place. But as far as a funding source, yes, that would be one that we would be looking at.
And you'll see, oh, do you want to say that?
Yeah, go ahead. I wanted to elaborate a little bit on operations funding, which is what we do on the ground, these P4Ss that we mentioned. We have a process called the executive planning process, and the next opportunity we have for that will be for fiscal year 16-17. That'll be the next upcoming biennium that we're able to ask for more resources. And indeed we may. 0.65 FTE is minuscule. Likely we will ask for more. Whether we get it approved or not by our legislature remains to be seen. Keep in mind that if we were to go out and ask for another 2 FTE and say X number of dollars to support that, that all comes out of our fund balance. When we get authorization for those operating programs, the money that pays for it comes out of our fund balance that we already have. And so it's not like new money necessarily comes in with it. Unless it's a grant or a cooperative program of some sort with a partner, we have to balance all that within our existing fund balance. And that's where that final S, sustainability, comes in by trying to generate revenue for our system.
And just briefly to finish, so, you know, as a general state, this is a 10-year plan, 10-year plus plan. It is visionary in the sense that we wanted to propose, you know, what we feel and what we've heard could be the potential of the state park. But in the implementation section, as far as priorities and recommendations, you will see that there are a number of what we call fundamental needs that we recognize the state park has to have before we would, you know, do something beyond what we could maintain. And a lot of that is just, you know, signage, working on staffing, or some others in there.
I mean, those are the primary ones.
Yeah.
So down fencing or signage, I mean. the
Fencing,
real
boundary
basic
signage,
language
yeah. So
is-
those, so don't, you know, it's not, we didn't intentionally put a list of, you know, priority number 1 is gonna, you know, build the trail system before we even have a welcome to Fish Creek State Park. There are some fundamental things that we have identified in there that need to happen prior to this, and a lot of that is finding funding sources. And that's where the partnership could potentially come in. Like with the RTP grant, that's going to be probably more competitive if it comes from a community or a user group versus us applying for, you know, our own funds. So.
Well, you know, I want to commend you guys on putting together a booklet here, and it's been 2 or 3 years ongoing, and you know, some of the comments that you've asked for and some of the rebuttals, I've been asked constantly if you guys have put some kind of cost analysis together to them, and you guys have not done that. And I think the big selling point for most of us here in Minot County is, you know, who's going to cost share this, and to what degree. We have a lot of concern on the county for one of the largest counties, but at the same time, we're poor. You know, we have people here now that are having a hard time eating, let alone staying in their homes and properties. And so to bring in a state park, that we know that, you know, that we won't have the sheriff department that be able to take care of it, the state level will be able to take care of it. Are you guys going to step up to the plate and have that part of your proposal? The roads as a Forest Service, and they don't take care of the roads as it is now. That's going to be part of your proposal. And there's a lot of answers, or a lot of questions that need to be taken care of. And nobody seems to be giving us those costs. I know what it should be, a lot of us. But as our commissioners, they want to know that type of stuff. Our planner wants to know it. I would like to know it. I know what these parks cost. If you want people to come back to them, you're going to have to build a nice park. I think the trail system that you guys are trying to introduce here is probably a good thing. I think we're violating some of the EA in your Unit A. I think we all welcome the WMA, but I'm not so sure we're entirely positive about your park. I'm not so sure that we shouldn't back up a little bit and think about the demographics. And there should be some other areas that may be more cost efficient. We haven't addressed the issues of the Fish Creek proper coming in from I-90 all the way into Post 5 to get up to Unit A or down to Unit B. Those are huge costs. And now you're putting into, you want to add electricity to this area. We only have single phase out to the ranch, and you're going to be coming from the ranch into the other areas. You probably have to be looking at 3 phase to do 30, 40 amp units and that type of stuff to bring those type of water homes in. So I mean, there's a lot of issues here. I was under the impression we had $300,000 in the coffers that a couple of years ago we talked about that was going to help fund some of these costs as we went along here.
From FWP or?
Yeah. So it was from the initial investment, the purchase or acquisition of all the property, and I haven't heard any more about this $320,000 that is in there. And where'd that go, or what we can use it for? And I kind of thought we'd see some kind of cost analysis of what this park may cost. And you guys got 52 of these, and I'd like to see what kind of return on the investment that the taxpayers are really getting. Because we don't, this isn't Yellowstone, this isn't Glacier. And I don't see the economic value here of your plan for park, that people are going to be a designated area. And we got one just here at Tarkio, but it's not filling up. We got one here at just Big Pine, it's a beautiful little park that could be enhanced. Hardly anybody uses that. And we got some other areas that we can look at. And I don't know, there's a lot of issues that need to be talked about, and there has to be cost put to it. That's my biggest concern. And then you also went back to your report here, you talked about a 2-year analysis again about whether or not the sustainability, whether or not the state should fund it again, or those types of things.
So you would like to see maybe in the implementation more of a cost analysis instead
Sure.
of just a general discussion?
And in that cost analysis is, you know, who are the people that you're targeting? I've been a general contractor for over 30 years in this industry, 41 years. I've built some of these big state parks. And these big state parks in the state of Washington, we built very nice ones. We actually built a very nice one here in Montana. And I know what they need, I know what they want, and they barely recover their costs. And so when you've got these 51, 52 parks, does the state really have that kind of money? Because Mineral County doesn't have any money here to open. We can't keep our hospitals open, we've got a lot of problems.
Well, I'll take a stab at trying to answer a couple of questions anyway, and then, follow up too if I miss something. And I can't give you, guaranteed answers to all of those. Those are all good questions, they're tough questions, and I think they're inherent in any sort of project like this for sure. And I'm assuming, Roger, the $300,000, I'm assuming it was some of the good neighbor money that came with the acquisition. So that probably, the $300,000 would have been, I'm guessing, for the state park and WMA, that was that dollar amount probably for the whole acquisition.
And that amount was around $40,000. It wasn't 300. True. I believe it was Senate Bill 165, good neighbor.
Well, I have it back here in my other reports that we were told it was $300,000 that we would see towards these projects, and it would be used through a period of time. It doesn't mean things won't change, and I'm not calling anybody out. So there was dollars there that we were talking about, and now we don't.
Yeah, 40,000 for the state
So
park.
so for the good neighbor money, it was about $40,000. And we purchased gate materials, road building materials, or I should say road blockage materials to block off the roads that we're looking at, fencing materials, a couple of implements for working up in that area, rock rake for one, for clearing roads. We also spent a fair amount of money of that on weed control.
And like I said, I'm not calling anybody out, I'm just saying is that we haven't addressed any of the issues for the ingress, egress of I-90 to this park. Let alone spend any money on any engineering. And then you're also talking about wanting to rent out the lookout tower. And I've also been involved with a lot of structural engineering over my time. And I was up to the tower hunting this year, and I was looking it over pretty good. We've got a lot of work to do there to make it safe for the public. And then on another level, insurance-wise, I just see a real hazard, and somebody wants to sue the state pretty quickly once they start finding their lives.
Yeah, we do have some money set aside now, and we've done some work on stabilizing the lookout, because we see the same potential risks there, that I'm sure you're seeing, we're going to be up there doing some work, and it's just to get that thing stabilized for now. I mean, that's the primary focus, and then the next phase would be to get something where somebody can potentially rent it. So far as ingress, egress, and some of those kinds of things, it's not in the plan in terms of the dollar amounts. That's one of the reasons in the internal review process that you saw so many different entities there, the county included, the commissioners, to try to engage early in that process and get up to speed. This is the second largest state park in the state, and it's the largest in western Montana. We don't, as a system, generally have park units that are this size. So we're learning things too as we go. What we're trying to do, at least with the plan, is set the stage for some potentials there, and certainly those kinds of discussions are going to have to be part of that. The cost the cost for the project also would be tied to the levels of development size and how much at a phase, we'd be implementing those kind of things. So I think those are all great questions. They're very valid points. I mean, talking about the electrical service and those kinds of things, those are just realities that, we're going to have to look at no matter what. So, we'll be working on trying to get some of that information flushed out as we go forward. Like, get at least some of that. I know there was a lot of points there. I don't want to miss anything.
No, I mean, those are just some of them.
Sure,
There's something
sure.
you can sit down with Tim and maybe a couple of the other contractors in the area just to help you out as a freebie, just to bring up some things that help you and help Mike and some of the areas who may not know some things about it. You got to point out that some of the area that you're transversing through to get to the park actually belongs to a private landowner. I know who that is. Happens to be me. Nobody's talking to me about, hey, when we start widening that road, what do we need to do? And we're not adverse to this park. We want it built correctly. And the bottom line is that I don't want Mineral County burdened with something after the fact that we can't handle. Because with the economy the way that it is, with Obamacare, we don't have manufacturing in this. We just don't have it. I'm just afraid that we're going to have people that move it into an area that we can't control, we don't know about. But we have some of that already in Fish Creek. And your fish, wildlife, and personnel can tell you that we can't control poaching. So we do have some real issues.
It's our intent to be a partner to the rest of the folks in the county, and that again, that's why we're trying to get in up front with some county involvement. We're really trying to take a concerted effort to do that. So we're all ears, and I know my door and my phone are always there, and I'm willing to listen as long as I need to, and jot down notes and ask questions and those sorts of things. So I won't try to bluff you like I have all the answers, but I'm certainly willing to try to find them and get answers as they come up. So we're hoping to be a good neighbor, and we're hoping that there could be some benefit to the county too. If things are done right, like you're saying, maybe there is some potential economic benefit to help things out there. So
I just don't want to be a field of green field that won't come.
I see that most of the emphasis is on the park concept. That's your pocket to deal with, that's fine. What is the intent for in the future to interface with the wildlife management area that surrounds it, and how are you going to make that interface? Trail systems? Is it, you have to stop at the boundary line, turn around and go back? There's a loop going through there. How are you going to allow people that have current accesses there now continue those accesses just because, without being stopped, just because you have a different dollar amount of a different bucket to purchase the two pieces? So somehow you need to provide some kind of continuity.
Yeah.
What are you doing with the guys that are doing the wildlife management area? Are you talking to them? I didn't pick up a whole lot of coordination from your report about what they're doing, even in the summer, and I haven't seen anything what they're doing. Sure. Where is this all going at with your interface?
Yeah, that's a really key part of it, and you saw some of the continuity. One of the bullets there was continuity, and it's not just the WMA, but also DNRC, Forest Service, other parcels, and land managers, private entities. There's definitely different uses on the state park because of funding requirements and some strings that are tied to where money comes from and what you can do. So what's potentially a possibility on the state park may or may not be a potential possibility on the wildlife management area. And they've got a separate management structure for managing those lands, separate from the state park system. Where we can work together, though, we fully acknowledge that, to a lot of folks, that's all Fish Creek. And, whether you're on the state park or the wildlife management area, you don't necessarily care. You want us to get it right and make things work. And I think that's what we're going to try to do. To the extent we can work together and have continuity and have opportunities that might exist both in the state park and the WMA, we're going to do that. We're going to also look at the potential management tools we have at the state park to share some of their concerns about wildlife values and how we can work together in that regard. So I think there is some overlap. They're not quite on the same page in terms of where we are in trying to put together a plan for the state park. You know, they haven't quite got to that level. I suspect you'll see more effort in that regard. They've got a lot more acreage that they're working with too. I know they're still faced with the same kinds of funding challenges that we are, you know, with staff and those sorts of things. So, you know, to the extent that we can, we'll be working with them. I mean, I know all those folks in our regional office very well, and it's very easy for us to go sit down. It's, you know, we may have differing opinions and values sometimes from the WMA to the state park, but where we can work together, you know, we acknowledge that that's all, you know, everybody here is ground, and we need to work together to try to facilitate the use of it.
One of the things that in this process, you know, Ollie mentioned that it's been going on for 2 or 3 years from the first inception of trying to take that from the Nature Conservancy, is to bring forth the idea of we do not want to lose any ground for access of our people that are we're currently using it when it was private timberland versus intermingled state ownership versus adjacent forest land. The accesses that were there at the time prior to the purchase, that was all in the negotiation process of the county supporting that purchase. We did not want to lose any ground in perceived access that we had prior to the sale. And now, from what you were saying a few minutes ago, well, we've got money set aside for barricades, we've got money set aside for road blocking, we had money set aside for other things. To me, that doesn't imply that it's going to stay the same. And you know, you don't have to travel on every inch, but at the same time, if it's there, use it as part of the infrastructure.
Sure.
And how are you going to handle that aspect of it? Now that you've already vocalized that you're going to lock things off.
Yeah. Well, I think and I assume you're referring to Mike's comment about some of those monies. You know, some of those are simply safety related, or, you know, we're stuck in a position where we have to sort of balance things out. I mean, we work on a budget too, where, you know, having, in some cases, all those roads open, we can't afford to do that and still have it safely accessible by the public. I think what you'll see down the road is some potential new opportunities. So, I mean, there could be some new OHV routes, for example, that would provide some additional types of access that might not be there now. That might be balanced out by some changes in the travel that are existing there, largely based on safety and then our ability, the sustainability factor of us being able to take care of that so that the public can use it. I know that's kind of a vague answer to your question. I mean, we aren't there yet. We haven't gotten out on the ground and started designating things. What we've been operating on so far was our interim management plan that included basically, you know, kind of like what you said, Dennis, as far as, you know, this is what's open or has been open since it was owned by Plum Creek, and you know, we continue to keep those roads open and accessible to the extent that we can. And for the large majority of those, they've stayed acceptable or accessible. I don't know about the wildlife management area. I haven't been involved with, you know, the road plan there and know what they've been up to as far as changing the travel. I'm sure you probably are aware of kind of what things are there, but you know, we're working to try to provide access opportunities that span the whole gamut so that we can retain a lot of those opportunities that have traditionally been there for the local folks. Any questions? Yeah.
I was wondering if you could bring up a bigger map again of the park.
Sure. Am I going the right way?
No.
Nope.
Which one are you looking for?
Well,
President.
it shows,
The zone one, this one?
no, there was one that showed that Section 8 where the big pine is. It's a real mishmash of ownerships in there.
Oh, yeah, here.
And if we can talk about that a little bit.
Sure.
Because it was mentioned about Big Pine being out there. And it looks like Section 8, it's got a weird piece of Forest Service landlocked. And then Big Pine is kind of sandwiched between that and DNRC and the wildlife management area. Just a suggestion there, could there be some way to clean up the ownerships in that section to make it a little easier for one entity to manage that instead of having basically three different entities right there.
Yeah, no, that's a good observation. I'll even make it a little bit more complicated in that Big Pine is a fishing access site that's a lease from DNRC, so there's another layer there.
Right.
But yeah, those I think are always things that, in a perfect world would be nice. I mean, talking with DNRC or the Forest Service about some of those things. Whether it could materialize, I don't know. We'd certainly be willing to have those discussions, but I can't speak on behalf of the multiple
It
ownerships.
just looks messy there, and it seems like it could be improved.
Yeah. And I know, in some of DNRC's comments too, not so much with the state park, but more on the WMA, just talking about what's the best way to consolidate things and, and manage, as a whole. And that's one of the reasons that the plan tries to look at the state park on a larger scale than just, the state park footprint. Trying to figure out how we can kind of work together. Note though, if you drive into Big Pine, it's going to say Primitive State Park on the sign right there, which is a designation, a legislative designation, and it does sort of direct what types of things can be done there. But it is a fishing access site, and the fishing access site program is managed under the fisheries division of the agency. So that's not something that we have, management oversight with. We can certainly work with them, but it doesn't fall within the state park system. So
It just seems like it would lend itself better to a state park function.
yeah, it has the amenities and the types of things there that you'd probably anticipate finding in a state park. Yeah.
That
But the
is
road
one-
leading in doesn't say Primitive.
What's that?
Fish Creek Road leading into Big Pine doesn't say Primitive.
No.
That is one of the recommendations, is to look at ways to incorporate Big Pine more into the state parks experience, as there is interpretive sign there, but what can we do more to enhance that and make it more consistent with what we have. The dark line there is the boundary line that we could fund that portion of it, but that's why we look at the regional context to understand, outside of our boundaries, what could be there. And so it is a recommendation in there to continue to work towards something to incorporate that better.
So when you talk about the Big Pine and then Ralph's takeout access, so do they have, is that not part of yours either?
No,
That's part of concerns?
yeah, any of the fishing access sites, so it'd be Big Pine Forks, and then any along the Clark Fork as well. And then also the Alberton Gorge, so the management of all the whitewater stuff that occurs through there is under the fisheries, the fishing access site program. It's still managed out of the regional office and that, but it's just under sort of a different branch of the agency, and it's funded differently, and all those sorts of things that internally create some challenges there. But the idea is to work in particular with Big Pine, and then also the Alberton Gorge, to work, acknowledging the recreational values of those places and the similarities that you might find with state parks or recreation you might associate with a state park or general recreation as opposed to fishing or something like that.
I had a question on forest management. How do you plan on continuing that? Insect and disease, fire suppression, that type of stuff?
For fire suppression, right now, and Mike can probably talk about that, we've worked with the 9 Mile District for sort of the initial response type of stuff. Mike, you want to just briefly touch on kind of where we are with that?
Well, we've got a signed sort of memo of understanding with the 9 Mile District, and they will be the first response for that area, for the district state park. So we've talked to them now. This year is probably the second year that we're going to the talks with them. Put together that.
And then on the forest management, general pest and timber and stuff like that, we had a consultant, a forestry consultant, go out and develop an initial plan for us. That's another area that's kind of a new area for the state park program in terms of forestry. We've done some things in other places, but it's just we don't have a forester on hand. It's not necessarily our wheelhouse. So we're working on getting that developed, and then we'll be looking for probably more direction moving forward on how we implement that. So that's the start of where we're at. The initial phases of what we would look at is probably just some thinning operations, down the road. We've got some places that are kind of dense and then other places that are, pretty well burned over and they're on those facing slopes that are going to be harder to get trees to grow anyway. So, we're just looking at taking a more active role in managing the forest out there and trying to address issues and things like that. But it's going to also be kind of a learning curve for us.
Will you coordinate with DNRC since they have that ability? Or?
Yeah, we can. We have in the past with some of their service foresters. We've done some localized projects. This one we also worked with a private consultant out of the Bitterroot that helped us develop some of that. And we've had more interest from the legislature as well in terms of looking at potential timber projects that we can do on our lands. Tearing back into the sustainability piece, if we have the opportunity to have something over time that gives us some revenue generation and we can do that in a way that fits with the overall values of the park and serving the public and having their recreational opportunities, that's all part of that larger picture and how we make things work.
I have one other quick question. Does local comment weigh heavier than comments from other states, other areas?
A comment is kind of a comment, but there's tremendous value in the local comment that doesn't come from other places. I mean, you guys know that area like the back of your hand. And so when we look at those comments, it's not just a yes or no vote. We want to know that the themes that are out there are truly what's important because that helps us make more informed decisions. So I guess what I'm saying is, no, your vote's the same as somebody else's vote, but all the extra stuff you put in your comment about what you've done when you go out there, what you'd like to see when you're out there, the concerns that you have because you know exactly what some of the challenges are going to be, that's what really best informs some of our decision making.
Just if I could follow up on your forestry question, if you take a look starting on page 30, and it's in the section of the plan, park background context, that consultant put together a section on forest resources and management. So that's on page 30.
You mentioned that you've heard from different groups, mountain biking groups, things like that. Do they have more pull than a comment card? Or how are they approaching you?
Sure.
How are they talking to you?
I wouldn't necessarily say they have more pull. There's definitely value in a voice that is a group of folks that help get that point across or share what their concerns are. I don't know that it gives them necessarily more pull though.
I mean, are they commenting you guys through the same route that
Yes,
we will?
yes.
Or are they sitting in your offices?
No. Well, we're having discussions with them, and they'll be at meetings and things like that, like this one, or like when the proposals move forward to the board, they'll come to the board meeting and maybe share something, or call with questions, those kinds of things. The same avenues are open to everyone. Yeah, I mean, there's no backdoor route to trying to get what somebody thinks they would like to see. And the idea is diversity too. I mean, we're really trying to provide something that can cater to a lot of different interests. And there's many different ways in which we could do that. I mean, you got lots of different ways to separate things and manage for different opportunities. So we're wanting to hear from all those folks out there that might have an interest.
I will say during public scoping, we did have one meeting here, and I think I remember talking to you. And about 30, 40 people came to this meeting. And we didn't have one in Missoula, and so no user groups came to this meeting. So we did do additional scoping, trying to reach out to some of those user groups to hear their interest, if there was any. But it was the same conversations that we had, and we still asked people to provide, ideas in writing if they wanted to. We received about 21 additional comments, not just from user groups, but also a lot of conservation groups we tried to reach out to, people that were connected with the acquisition, going back and updating them and saying we're working on this. So there was additional work that we did during public scoping just because we didn't feel like we've heard the full gamut that could be there. But since then, yeah, I mean, they have the exact same way to comment, and we are hosting a meeting in Missoula this time because again, we feel we have through our outreach, people are more generally knowledgeable about Fish Creek or just about the process overall. So trying to tap into that a bit more.
We've tried to draw too, from acquisition all the way until now as people come on with interest in the project, continuing to expand that group of folks we try to keep in the know. I mean, it might sound silly, but it's really hard sometimes to get people to kind of pay attention with as many things going on out there. And so we know there's folks out there that would have an interest, and it's like, well, you guys might want to pay attention to this because we've got something that might be of interest to you. So,
Yeah, Chip.
yeah.
I'll go on a little bit, so forgive me. I'll get to the point eventually. Sure. Speaking of Missoula, you'll probably get a much different opinion here. A lot of folks didn't come to me tonight because they actually feel like maybe it won't matter. A lot of the decisions have already been made. But just a little bit of history, there's 782,000 acres in Mineral County. 10% is private, so we have about 74,000 private acres that we can tax and do things with. So to compare that with you guys, your park and your WMA together is 40,000 acres. You have almost half as much as we do. And when you talk about Missoula, or when we talk about the land, the access is an issue here because we have the Forest Service, and we are already frustrated with all the access problems they present with us. And so when this proposal came along for 40,000 to be purchased by the state, by you guys, a lot of people thought, well, that would be better than being shut out. In other words, if Plum Creek private landowner sold to other private people, maybe Ted Turner would buy it. Maybe he'd lock us out. So a lot of people initially thought that that was the best thing to go with. However, we always find out later there's unintended consequences. For example, and I don't want to talk about the state park, but that 36,000 acres of WMA brought with it actually more things that restrict people's access. There can't be guided hunting groups can't go across there. Hole-in-the-wall lodge is right up there. That's what they live on. We can't have power up there anymore. Part of the modern amenity of electricity would be going right across the WMA land, which prohibits modern amenities. A lot of people up there were looking forward to having power one day, along with Hole-in-the-wall lodge and the Forest Service. So we're not going to be able to cut firewood up there. We're not going to be able to drive motorized vehicles up there. We're already experiencing some limited access. Missoula, Montana has 3 legitimate wilderness areas within 1 hour's drive. Lots of people can drive to the Scapegoats, to the Pintlers, to the Bob Marshall. Right here in our backyard, we have another proposed wilderness, the Great Burn, which is basically a de facto wilderness. So now we can't even use that. And when you talk about continuity, what I worry, my concern is that maybe the continuity is with the Forest Service to dovetail with the Great Burn, and the WMA, and the wolf, and the grizzly bear, and the corridor, and so forth, and so on. And the state park, while it's carved out, there might be a good idea, but when you say we have a lot of roads there, and some of them we're going to evaluate, that I translate that to mean probably closed. And so what we really need, we don't need more trails or wildlife watchers. We've got all these, 90% of the land is already that currently. So when you pitch an idea, the hunters are our biggest helpers around here. They got the fat wallets, they buy equipment, they buy guns. They stay for a while, they buy steak, they buy whiskey, they bring their four-wheelers. But these people have been using the boat launches and the seer access. It's not for the day. You can buy their ice at the Valley Grocery in Alberton. They don't even stay the night in the Big Sky. They're here, they're gone, they pound roads, they flip the rafts, they get their cars broken into. Who gets to go take care of all those problems? We do. So I'm concerned when there's only a 0.65 FTE so far because you guys are going to have to, we're counting on you guys to spray your weeds, have a park ranger. When someone has a dog bite in the park or a loud party in the park or a fight, we can't afford that. And the economic benefits that you're pitching so far sound the same as what the Forest Service pitches. We've got Heart Lake Trail. How many people come up there and hike and stay? It's a beautiful trail. I don't know if it's any prettier than the Wilderness Peak Trail, but we've got that stuff already. And I just want to make sure that when you're thinking about what you're going to do with the park, because I know there's limitations with WMA, and I guess we're already beyond that. No more power, no more firewood cutting, no more guided hunting routes. But the park, with all those roads that are currently in existence, currently there by Plum Creek, a lot of them are kind of already self-regulating in terms of outlaw riding because of the steep terrain. It kind of keeps, we have a whole new group of baby boomers coming up who can't get up into the Great Burn Wilderness and hike, and they can't walk in the WMA, and they need to be able to go with a four-wheeler or a truck and experience the great outdoors without having to be just one more wilderness an hour from the city.
Sure. Thanks, Roman. I hear your frustration there. It doesn't go unnoticed. One of the reasons that we're looking at Fish Creek State Park in that larger context is to hopefully get at some of the things I think you're talking about in terms of, well, that's already out there. It's just down there in the Forest Service, or it's, in the proposed Great Burn, or it's WMA or whatever. We have the ability and the flexibility within the state park to do some things like have opportunities for cutting firewood, to have roads that might provide more opportunity for motorized travel than you might find in other places. The hope is that this can be something that has some unique opportunities. It's a little bit different than some of that. That's not to say we don't have limitations too. Especially as we look at diverse arrays of opportunities, we're going to have to balance that. But we're hoping that we can help, take care of some of that frustration by providing some opportunities there that would, enable the folks you're talking about to still enjoy that chunk of where they're from and they like to go recreate. So.
And the idea with the trail system versus what's there with the roads is that we did hear from a lot of motorized groups that the trail experience, when it's designed for an ATV or a motorcycle, is different than just an open road. And so that's what we would try to provide, not in the sense, I'm sorry, there's like a mouse flying around down there. Not in the sense that, that the road system isn't adequate, but how can we enhance that with a more designed experience? And that's also what we've heard from mountain bikers too, that, mountain bikers, motorized recreationists actually have a lot in common. They're looking for areas to do their activity in a legitimate, safe area. And when we looked at the regional context as far as trails and that, specific context, there wasn't a lot out there. And so that's what we meant by providing a trail system and, certainly looking at the road base as that foundation. But we did hear that, I felt pretty loud and clear from a lot of the user groups looking for that enhanced access. And I will say that, the question about comments earlier, it's not a vote, but say if we get majority of comments that say, this should be managed as a wildlife management area, and we get no comments supporting people's activities or uses, it definitely is not a fair representation. So that's where your voice and your comments do come out in showing that there is support for these activities. We can hear it now, but again, this is not necessarily public record. So.
Yeah, and going back to I think your earlier comment, Roman, at the beginning, in which maybe not everybody's here tonight just because they don't feel like it's going to matter. Maybe we can't cater to every specific desire that each person would have, but I think Martin's point is really important, and that is if those folks who maybe think that what's going to happen down the road isn't what they want, or if it is what they want, we need to hear that from them. In the interim phase, the interim management plan, what you saw was a blended effort of trying to take what's there, a status quo look at things when Plum Creek had it, and then through the Nature Conservancy and on to FWP. Take that piece, blend the state park values with the wildlife management area values and package all that up, and here, this is what we've got. We're at a point now where the state park management plan can be something that's for the state park, and that has differences and different opportunities than the rest of that interim management plan or the WMA itself. So it is a little bit new and different here, and we need those folks to share with us their thoughts, because it does matter, it does count. And like Martin said, if we hear one side of the equation, then we don't have an opportunity to make a decision the other direction because nobody else weighed in that way. We need to hear whether or not you want, opportunity for vehicles and motorized use. We need to hear, that you want, facilities or developments at such and such a level. All those things really help us make the decision. So do encourage those folks to take some time and if nothing else, ask some questions and we'll help them better understand what's going on.
I think it's a matter of balance and scope. I mean, there's more people ride a bike in Missoula than there are all of Mineral County residents. And same people that want more wilderness in Missoula than all of Mineral County residents. So I think it would be fair to say you got to take it into scope and balance.
And we're definitely looking at the state park. I mean, the reason why we bring up those different funding sources is because we are approaching the state park from a recreation perspective. There is wildlife habitat, there is corridor connectivity, but it's a state park. It is owned by the people of Montana, so our mission is to provide that experience with the state park. And if you don't think we're there in the draft plan, by all means, please let us know because that's what the draft is for. We have developed this vision, which we feel has taken into context, like I said, the public scoping and the process that we did. But if we're not there yet, please let us know.
I have one other comment I'd like to add on motorized use. Currently in Montana State Park system, we do not have one single designated ATV trail anywhere in our system. Our largest park is the Coshika State Park in Florida. It's 11,000 acres. It's a badlands environment and it's not conducive to, it's so rugged, it's not conducive to those types of trails. Most of our other parks are quite small or else have terrain limitations. And so we're looking at Fish Creek as one of these places in our state park system where we can develop a high-quality motorized recreation opportunity. And I feel like we've touched on that pretty well in the plan. It's certainly our intent to provide that type of activity in this park. Maybe not on every single trail or every single square inch, but certainly to the level of having good opportunities and lots to choose from. That's an area where, for those that are interested in motorized recreation, we'd love to hear from you.
I guess you're up.
I've heard that there was either a proposal or consideration to obliterate the road from Rock Creek that ties into Williams Pass Road. I know it's a really specific question. Is that true? And if so, would decisions like that be presented so that people could weigh in on them, or is that just something that would happen?
I think you're talking the connector, the short connector road.
Right. I live on the other end, and so I use that quite a bit to go to Williams.
Sure.
I would be going through the state park, whereas I normally don't.
That one.
Yeah, it comes from right where the hand is, up and ties in.
Across there. It doesn't show up real well on this map. I think I know the one that you're talking about.
It's one of those things that I just heard.
Sure. That's not a discussion that we've had. Certainly if you had the question, you give me a call and we can let you know what we're thinking. But something like that would be part of kind of a larger approach to the road system and trying to identify which ones, we can manage and what the travel levels are on them and some of that kind of stuff. So, typically when we're looking at a decision like that or something that we're assuming is going to affect people's travel or where they live and stuff like that, we're going to try to engage the public in those decision-making processes. This wouldn't necessarily be a groundbreaking thing, but we're going to try to touch base with those local folks and see what's going on and what their thoughts are.
Okay.
And I'd like to add to that, if I could, Chet. That actually was recommended in the environmental assessment for the acquisition of property that due to wildlife movement corridor concerns that road be downgraded to, not obliterated, but closed to traffic and used as a trail, possibly used as a trail. But that was in the environmental assessment for the acquisition.
So it's probably
So you probably heard of it then.
And it's probably going to happen.
I don't know.
really don't know.
I mean, I think that, and thanks, Mike, because I wasn't aware of that, but this would be something that we would discuss on a little bit larger scale within the state park footprint. So, hearing your concerns there, I mean, I'd be inclined to be giving you a buzz and seeing what some of your thoughts were.
I just want to do a time check. It is 8 o'clock, so we'll stay as long as you guys want to keep talking, but feel free. This was kind of our designated end time, so no one will give you nasty glances if you get up and leave. But we'll stay.
When this discussion was first coming about, one of the things that the state had brought to the attendees was that this is the second largest state park that is going to be, and that each park is unique in itself, and therefore each park has its own set of operating rules. When we talk about the Badlands having one set of concepts versus this here one, I guess the point is what is this one getting its own set of rules, and is that still the concept, so that we can fine tune this the way we want to? That's the first half of the question. The second half of the question, once this is decided and you go about saying whatever it's going to be, how can we affect change or flex when something isn't quite the way we want it? And do we have to wait 20 years? Can we say next year we can fix it? How do you handle that aspect of fine tuning and then flexibility afterwards?
Sure. The first half of your question, there's kind of two pieces to that. One is that there's set rules and standards, that apply to all the state parks. Our fee rule is a good example of that. So that, camping fee is going to be the same at every state park. And there's going to be a schedule for other activities. It's going to be the same at each state park. The public use regulations are going to be the same at all the state parks, those kind of things. I think what the Makoshika example is one in which, some of those rules are sort of tailored to the specifics of the park. And those specifics are what you'll see in this plan. So the vision that we started off with about what sort of the overall vision for the plan is, and then also those goals and objectives that lead through the management direction is where you're going to find the pieces that might be a little bit different, because Fish Creek is different than Makoshika or another park, Salmon Classic State Park, for example. So the devil's in the details, so to speak, in that management direction piece. If you still have something that you're curious about or that you don't see, or you're wondering, how does Fish Creek differ than maybe another park, or comparing those things, then that'd be a perfect avenue for the comments in regard to the plan. And that's also, I think, the avenue to take if you've got changes that you'd like to see take place. The idea, though, is that once we get the plan out, through this whole public comment process and incorporate those into the final version, that'll be our guiding document, for the direction of the state park. So that's why it's really important to get that comment in now about, the types of opportunities or concerns that you might have.
I think too, one of the reasons each park is somewhat unique, it's often governed by just the sheer size. Many of our parks are very small. The terrain, the general environment. Some things are conducive based on the terrain or the layout or the size of something. And in this case, we've got enough land area where we've got a lot of opportunity to provide diverse recreation.
Is it true that there's another meeting set up in Missoula about the park as well?
Yeah, the same type of meeting as this will be on Wednesday in Missoula.
That's my question being, why would you set up a meeting in Missoula when it falls in Mineral County? We didn't go to a meeting on the park over in Glendale.
Sure. When we were going through some of the initial scoping, there's a lot of interest in the state park from folks in Missoula, and there's interest groups in Missoula that have interest in this project. So in order to try to capture a lot of that input, we felt that having a meeting in Missoula was something that we wanted to do to try to reach out to more of those groups. But we acknowledge that this is a Mineral County economy Mineral County communities, et cetera. That's why we're here in Superior to do a meeting, for the local folks as well.
Yeah, and I think along that same line, you have to think about the initial acquisition. The Mineral County was really behind this because it was in Mineral County. I think, when you try to weight the comments, I know you say you have to weigh their comments the same, but it was Mineral County that really helped you get a horse certificate.
And the values that we get from, your comments coming from Mineral County are really important. I mean, I kind of said this earlier, but I want to say it again. I mean, share with us what's important to you and why, because people who don't necessarily have that connection to this place aren't going to have that in their comment. I mean, they might say, I want a mountain bike trail, but that's going to be different than probably the comment that you give me about, I've been going there for 25 years with my family, et cetera. So we want to hear those kinds of things and why that relates to what you'd like to see out there. That's important. It helps us formulate our decisions. And I think that's where we hopefully can capture some of what you're getting at.
Well, I think our biggest concern for Fish Creek is we've seen so much abuse in this license plates 4, 15, and 35. And we won't make no bones about it.
Yeah.
And that's where it comes from. So here we are, letting them weigh on a decision for the license plate number 54.
Yeah.
So it's a real concern.
This is, a state park, it's a state park system, and so of course we acknowledge Mineral County, but it is part of our larger 54 state park system, so we do look at people coming from all over and look at what Fish Creek adds to the state park system too. So, and again, hopefully the plan reflects, there is a big emphasis on Mineral County in the plan, and we looked at a lot of Mineral County specific documents to try to connect our recommendations to the growth policy, the resource use plan, the Bitterroot economic development strategy, a lot of those, the Mineral County Challenge. We tried to look at those and see how this park and this plan can fit into those contexts. So, you have one?
Two things. Could we, make a note of that? That the people in Mineral County sort of, they should drive here for a meeting too. They're going to come here and use our services. Sounds like it's valid point.
That
Just we've never had two meetings. It's always been in Mineral County because it's, affecting the people in Mineral County.
Sure. They're meeting in Alberta instead.
And enough, where do we get to the point where you guys say, okay, this is what it's gonna cost, this is what we're gonna do, we're gonna put, $30,000 into the tower, monies, where do you get to that in part of your plan? Where you don't plan how much things are gonna cost and where you're gonna put it?
The individual cost for projects.
Is that in the final or?
Well, there'll be, it depends on the scale. I mean, there are certain things in terms of the budgets that we have for just operational costs, that Mike oversees that budget, and he's going to make decisions on, maintenance stuff. And then even larger projects that we can do, major maintenance types of projects like maybe stabilizing the lookout. Those are things that we can make, decisions on, just as managers of the state park. The larger projects, though, when we're talking about developing a campground, those larger groundbreaking projects, those will have a site design, those will have all the costs broken down there, and they'll have a separate analysis, review, public process, et cetera. And so that's where you would see the dollars that are tied to those kinds of things. That would also include, where we're talking about access roads and things like that. Those would be the larger scale analysis of what those costs would be, what impacts it would have, what mitigations would need to take place, that sort of thing.
So will that be something in the total plan where we'll get to comment on, where you guys will know where the money's going to go?
No, the plan will be pretty much as you see it. I mean, with edits and stuff that reflect the comment, but there won't be dollars per se per project, just because we don't have the exact details on the development. Say, for example, how many square feet of parking do you have and those kinds of things. But when those future processes come along, say for development of a campground, then that list or that project would go back out to everybody that was interested for an opportunity to weigh in.
I guess this question is you guys have a schedule. We know that this is a draft. Michael's say, hey, I think we would like to see Fish Creek move forward, you guys put in the legislature and say, hey, I need $5 million, I'd like to move forward with a certain part of the schedule.
Yeah.
So when does that happen? Every year, every 2 years that you're going to propose to ask for these dollars?
That gets back to kind of what Roger's saying as far as some of our requests. You know, we're looking out, you know, to 16, 17, and then some of our requests, you know, I mean, there are ways out there.
Yeah, we know we have a 10-year
Right.
tenure here to look at. You know, but
Yeah.
we're looking at a 5, 10-year, 20-year plan.
Sure, an implementation plan over time like that.
Exactly, that's-
Yeah. You know, so much of it is dependent upon, you know, where the funding comes from and what the approval required to get it is. In other words, if, say, we had to go to the legislature for approval on something, we may or may not get it. And so rather than spinning our wheels on speculating, if we can get those opportunities, then we can come back and say, hey, look, we've got an opportunity now for, you know, however much money it's going to take to do something. Here's what we think might be a good idea. Taking a part of this plan and then moving forward the details with the dollars, et cetera, for, you know, more public input.
Right, because as time goes on in these types of areas, and you got degradation of certain things, but you also have good things that happen and
Sure.
plans change dramatically.
Sure.
And your cost increase. So, you know,
As I said earlier, the next opportunity to ask for a significant increase in FTE and staffing or operations dollars will be for that FY fiscal year 16, 17. We're actually working on a proposal for that this month. And that's the next big opportunity for that. We can move things around a little bit internally with what we have to work with. But as you can see right now where we stand, we don't have a lot to work with at Fish Creek with 0.65 FTE and such. But I'm certain we will be proposing increased authority for operations in this park in that 16, 17 by the end of the subject of legislative approval.
it goes back to the same thing that Roman talked about. The commissioners and Tim need something in writing that you guys are going to request to the legislature that we can bite on. That says, yeah, these are things that the public here in Mineral County want to see.
Yeah.
And they make sense to us. And then it helps you guys out when you go actually ask for funding. So we're not short something.
Yep. No, that's really critical. I mean, you know, there's lots of voices when the legislature's in session. So there's something you guys are supportive of. You know, we'll do our best to communicate what ideas and opportunities we see in trying to stay connected to Mineral County. Then as those come up and you see some value there, yeah, definitely help us out by sharing your support. So, did that get your question, Jason?
I think so, you know, I was just more concerned with, you know, going, hey, this is what we're gonna do, we don't know where we're gonna get the money, but
Yeah.
when we get it, we're just gonna go do it.
No, there'll
We
be.
don't really know, hey,
Yeah.
well, we're gonna have $300,000, this is what we're gonna do with it.
Right.
And do we get to comment on how it's done, you know? I know the lookout tower was, you know, $30,000 or $40,000, and just your return on that, if you're gonna rent it for $25 a night, you know, it don't add up, you know, for a certain time of year, so maybe that money, you know, goes somewhere else that, you know, can add up.
Sure.
Not that it's, you know, maybe not a viable option, but.
Yeah. You know, for us too, it's a state park system, you know, that's kind of managed with all the state parks and all of the assets that we have, you know, in terms of generating revenue. You know, so it does add up, you know, when you look at it system-wide, and we need to try to find ways to leverage some of that support. You know, and sometimes we can get funding for a project, you know, that might come from an external source, and then it yields some revenue streams for us, even if it's some little amounts that add up to help the system as a whole. So, you know, there's different ways of kind of looking at that, and that's really where Roger comes into play. You know, he's chief of operations for all of these parks. My world is just here kind of in Region 2, but, you know, we're having to work as a system, and he's helping us kind of get there by figuring out ways to generate revenue and fund the overall park
I mean,
system.
you know, the road in there is just, you know, we gotta make a good road for people to come see it.
Yeah.
They won't come back to that.
So I just want to clarify, the discussion of cost is more that you guys are interested in seeing some of these costs as it relates to what might be a priority.
And being a voice, you know.
Okay, so the input on the cost.
Well, that's
itself.
one, but we want to be assured that the state is going to bear this burden and that the county, and that you understand this county doesn't have that, because in the back here, you guys talk about sustainability, and every 2 years, you're gonna take a look at this, whether or not you're gonna fund it again, or to what degree, or, you know, how Mike's gonna manage this, if he's got money, you know, is this trail gonna be groomed, or can I handle the campgrounds this year, or, you know, based on the fact that we didn't have any traffic last year.
Yeah.
So, I mean, the return on the investment doesn't yield for people to make sense.
Yeah, and I hope it doesn't sound like we'd walk away and after 2 years we decided it wasn't worthwhile, because that, you know, that's not the case. I mean, we'd be on a cycle to take a look at where we are in terms of implementing the plan over time, you know, and trying to get our ducks in a row as far as making things happen.
But you have to understand is that this county's poor. You guys give us 1 or 2 game wardens to take care of this whole county, and that's just an example. And for Discovery, that is Frenchtown Fire District. Okay? You're under the, so when you call for an EMT or emergency, you're gonna get 911 and you're gonna get Frenchtown. And so when they come out there, they have trained EMTs, but they can't administer morphine or anything if somebody's in pain. I know that for a fact. Okay, so then when they pick you up in the ambulance, you're gonna take you to the Mineral County and Missoula border, and they're gonna transport you over to the Missoula ambulance. So you got all this rigmarole. And so those are things of Discovery that could cost somebody their life. And we had this happen just a few weeks ago with my son. That extra hour there almost cost us a job.
I think those are good points. I mean, definitely get those in your comments so we can factor that stuff in. I mean, we want to know about that stuff, and we want to try to work on coming up with, you know, scenarios where we can address those issues to the best of our abilities. There's probably ways to work together and come up with, you know, incident response plans and things like that that help us address some of those donut holes kind of in the response.
I mean, Mineral County Rescue and Search and Rescue are a whole different thing. Sure. River and that type of stuff, we're going to need them, and people get lined up. But immediate emergency, it's 9 miles from Frenchtown versus 20 miles for Superior.
Has anybody touched on the winter usage?
On what?
On winter?
Oh, winter usage?
Yeah.
You mean
And scoping
interests and stuff?
Interest, snowmobiling, cross-country skiing.
Yeah. There's definitely some interest there, not as strong as some of the, you know, summer and the shoulder season uses and stuff. You know, by and large, it's been more of a summer type activity base. There's some though, and I think there's potential and opportunities for winter use. You know, so that'd be another area where I think it'd be good to have some comment in that regard. You know, what's either occurring there and where, or what you'd like to see opportunities for and where, that kind of stuff. Yeah.
And I believe during scoping, I did meet with the snowmobile groups. A lot of them have crossover with the motorized group. So, you know, up to the Williams Peak lookout is definitely an opportunity given snow coverage that could be there. But yeah, we're looking at all year-round use there and what it could support. And from an economic perspective, Glacier Country Tourism is really supportive of that, because a lot of our parks do close down in the winter, but looking at what Fish Creek could support year-round for those sorts of uses. Is that something you're interested in?
I'm just curious.
Okay.
Does the state pay taxes on the acquired property?
We do, yeah.
So is that acreage reflected in Roman's total of private land?
We pay in lieu of taxes. We pay $7,600 a year for the Fish Creek State Park, and we pay about $55,000 a year to the county department. The park is, according to my latest figures, $7,600. It's the same amount as if it were taxed. It's what we call payment in lieu of tax.
And that was
based on everyone? Yes. I presume so. You know, it could be. Yeah, it was based on.
And that was a change not all that long ago, was it not, Roger? As far as the department paying?
Yeah, in
in-
2009, I think it was that we were paying those taxes. So,
I got one last question before we break up, but I see a disconnect here, and it's frustrating, because when we addressed this whole acquisition, we were looking at the whole picture of the WMA as well as the park. And somewhere along the line is, I see you guys are only dealing with the park portion, and that's fine, that's what your job is. But somehow there's a disconnect because you're saying that the WMA does not exist. And when they look at theirs, they're saying yours doesn't exist. There is no, you talked about the connectivity. So somehow, you guys are going ahead, we don't hear nothing about the WMA. So all the input we're putting into here, we still have this thought in the back of our head of this giant, huge, whole Fish Creek area. That's not what is really here that we're dealing with tonight. It's just a little parcel under, just south of the interstate. Somehow, we have to not lose concept of the WMA that's in there. I realize that's not your part, but it needs to also be in this, in the talking status, and it's truncated off because it's outside of your box. Something's wrong with that picture. How do we get that to be addressed when we addressed it in the whole initial package 2 or 3 years ago?
You'll see in the plan as you go through there too, where it talks about collaboration, and the WMA is a piece of that. The plan itself, I mean, I understand where you're saying it's just this chunk and it's where's the rest of it. We've tried to hit on that a couple ways. One is just the larger landscape, and how does the park fit within that, and trying to think in that, even beyond the WMA into kind of more of a regional look, how does the park fit? The other piece, though, is going to be moving forward, having continued discussions with, the Fish and Wildlife side of the agency on, what concerns they have and what concerns we have and how we fit together. Because what we'd like to see is something that does do more of what you're suggesting, and that's to have, continuity there. So, even though we have differences in funding, differences in kind of missions within various parts of the agency, you don't have to worry about that. So moving forward, that'll be something we're working on.
and within the plan itself, I mean, the Fish and Wildlife Division literally wrote the sections on fish and wildlife for the plan. So those values are within it, but then this process helps inform their process and, helps them understand the state park and the WMA and how those really do need to be very connected. And also with DNRC and the Forest Service, when we had our agency meeting that Dwayne came to, people were very positive in the sense that they get it. They get that this is a large landscape. There's a lot of checkerboard around it. It's going to take some time to massage those differences together, but, the hope and, I guess if we can be eternally optimistic is that we will get there and, try to make that a seamless transition between all of the landowners, not just the WMA, even though it is our biggest neighbor, but with DNRC, and particularly because they actually have different statutory regulations than FWP, which we have to work through. So, the general tone is positive, and there's a big understanding that this needs to be done together, even though this plan is just focusing on this park. So, it's kind of a roundabout way to answer it, but, it is at the top of everyone's mind.
My name's Tim Reed, I'm from the county. I'm currently speaking both sides a little bit, but I would like to request a revised plan be developed and sent out to us. And a couple of my observations is I really don't care what the Viking plan in Helena had to do with. That had nothing to do with fishing. There's quite a bit of content in here that I don't think really appeals and applies and is germane to what the Fish Creek development is. I want to know when somebody is out there and they unload their bikes and they look at a hill and the trail system, are they going to be using it? Is that going to be appealing to them? Or do they have to have it paved? I would like to see something more relational to see that the people are using the backcountry experience and have grades and things like that instead of, develop trails and areas at the end. And that's one observation. I'm concerned about how you talked about the taxes and stuff, because 25,000 of the payment in lieu goes to the Alberton schools, and that needs to be maintained. But the next largest amount of that money went to the DNRC for fire protection. And I'm just seeing an absence of the DNRC in this plan. And I think that the DNRC should be more brought here. My understanding was that the DNRC is the primary responder for wildland fire in the Fishkill area. That's the way our emergency plan is set up for the county. So I think there should be some more involvement in drawing in on the DNRC. I'd also like to see the plan detail the roads that are going to be open and then whatever else. But just let us know that these roads are going to be open. And I'd also like you to, assess if the Forest Service has an easement on that road, is that easement going to be binding so that you have to leave it open? Because the Sear Peak Road and the Rock Creek Road and everything else, those are built on easements that were obtained from the Plum Creek Company, but therefore the Forest Service needs those roads to access their lands. Are they going to stay open? But now they're originating on state park land. All of a sudden, is there a change in the process about whether the roads could be closed or open? I'd like to see that in there. The other thing is that I just really can't assess right now whether there's, even if there's a mandate for a campground, or you planning a campground, or, there's discussion about a campground, but if you obtain land for a park, does that automatically obligate you to put in a campground somewhere? I don't.
No, there's not an obligation for a campground when we have a state park. It was one of the opportunities that was identified. And the zoning that's in, not this map, but the other one, would identify locations where we might find that to be a suitable location. But, it's nothing set in stone as far as what happens, just because it's a state park. Typically, many of the state parks have camping opportunities, and that's one of our revenue generators, in the state park system, are camping opportunities. So it fits in there as a piece, as an opportunity, and also a revenue source for the state park.
I just think that if you had a choice between a high area away from water versus a piece of the park that now is sitting right on the Fish Creek, that we should at least give some strong consideration for developing a park that would basically front on Fish Creek. I would think that would have draw many times over than a campground set up on top of a high dry knob that you look at the river, 400 or 500 feet below you in elevation. It seems like there should be some.
With the public road running right in front. That is sort of something.
Yeah, there's challenges with topography and then, resource sensitivity as well that all factor into some of that. But, site selection is definitely something that's part of the equation when we look at that kind of stuff to figure out what the public's going to use. I don't think there's not an interest in creating something that nobody wants to visit. The intent here is to provide opportunities that the public's looking for. So.
Any other discussion points? All right, well, thank you guys for coming, and again, please do comment on the plan, and you can come talk to us and give us the light